Hi, everybody. Today is an exciting day. We are starting with our first series of our edition notice special, and we have our favorite Kenny Basumatary with us. He has made some fantastic films like Local Kung Fu 1, Local Kung Fu 2, uh, Suspended Inspector Boro, and the Local Utpat. I would remember, I think perhaps it was in the summer of 2013 or 14. As usual, we were rushing for one of the film festivals ticket in Delhi, and it seems everybody was talking about that one Assamese film which got a screen somehow. And after that screening, it was so popular. I remember it had to be shown for some about 8 or 9 times, Kenny.
No,
Ocean's Film
another.
Festival.
We got two more shows. Tapasat.
We had we had series of people following us. I had joined Oceans after that, and I remember every year people were asking about when is the sequel of Local Kung Fu coming. It was such a big popular film. People were not talking about Janu Barua. People were not talking about other legend filmmakers, but people are talking about Kenny. And since then, I was a big fan. And then I
Thank you
had
very much.
discovered all the other series. And to have a conversation with Kenny, we found Amrita, the very busy journalist, and she's covering all the political things. And now the fake news are also her favorites, which is getting popular. And she has been talking a lot about culture and cinema. And her focus, because of her background, she loves Assam, Assamese culture, Assamese film, and she had perhaps worked with Kenny also in one of the films. We'll get to know all of these things. I'll go offline and I'm leaving all this to both of you. Carry on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. So we are going to have this chat with Kenny about his incredible journey as not just a director, a filmmaker, but as a actor and as someone uh, who has given birth to a sort of cult in Northeast and thereabouts. I mean, not just Assam, and a lot of others. So we are going to talk about Kenny's journey as an actor, filmmaker, and his local kung fu series, and how that series have given has given birth to a sort of subculture, or at least sort of taken our interest and taken our attention to that subculture in Guwahati, which we all knew existed, but we didn't see it for ourselves. We're going to talk about how he sort of financed his first movie, and how difficult is it to navigate as an artist or a filmmaker from the Northeast? So first of all, Kenny, uh, I know I like Ricky me just said the first time I saw you. I mean, I we met each other while you were eating at one stall at the last Oceans. It's like the 2012 Oceans, and we just bumped into each other. We were Assamese. We started talking, and that's how I found out your movie. And for someone who doesn't wake up early, I was there at your show at bang 8:30 in the morning.
Thank
As
you.
and I discovered something. I looked around me, I looked around the cinema hall, and I was amazed. There were people, of course, there were a lot of Assamese, but there were people who had no idea about what Assamese subculture is like or what an Assamese language looks like, and everybody was laughing. I remember reading this one review of your work. I think this was LKF2, where a lot of other big, all the big publications had reviewed you because they could no longer ignore you. They knew the kind of force that you are bringing to the screen, and they all and I think I remember this one critic who said that he was laughing looking at the subtitles on screen while he looked around and the Assamese people were laughing about 10 seconds later when the actual
Yeah,
delivery of
that was
I
Rahul
would
Desai, I think.
okay. So I mean that's how I remember that happened to me as well. And a lot of these Assamese they were laughing a little later than the others. And this was the first movie, which we couldn't believe what was on happening on screen. So before we go to to discussing LKF, I first want to focus a little bit on your journey as Kenny, as how you went to Delhi for your IIT course, and then at some point you decided that you don't want to do it anymore, and you went back to Guwahati to be a newsreader for DD. So can you take us a little bit through that journey? What led you to sort of give it up at one point? Because a, co- a graduate in engineering, a course in engineering is still one of the most coveted professions for a lot of parents. There's sort of expectations in that. So what led you to sort of leave IIT?
I wanted to be a filmmaker right from around class 6 or 7. That's when we started watching good quality films. So we happened to have a VCR at the time, and so every Sunday, a friend of mine would come over and we would watch something. So we watched lots of good films, Terminator to The Fugitive, Blade Runner, all these things were films we watched at that time. And so that was the time when I sort of thought it would be really nice to be able to do this, to create these worlds, to be a director and create stories like this, create worlds like this. So, and then that year on a train journey, we went from Guwahati to Bombay and from Bombay to Pune. On the train from Guwahati to Bombay, sitting near us was a person who was going to give the FTII direction entrance test. So that was the first time I think I'd heard of the Film and Television Institute of India. So he went and gave the test, and then we came back after about 2 weeks, I think, and coincidentally he was again in the same train, Dadar Express, in the same bogie. So again we talked and exchanged addresses, and later I got to know that he had got through. So he took admission in FTII, and then he used to write letters saying that we did this today and we did that. So this was in 1991, no email, nothing. It was all letters. So 91 to 93, around approximately 2 years, we corresponded, and that sort of cemented my ambition. Okay, if I want to be a director, then this is how you do it in India. You complete your graduation and then you go to FTII. So that was all I knew. And 11 and 12, you get good marks. You, of course, engineering or medical, those are only two options. And at that time, there was no Google, there was no career counseling. We didn't know what to do, no internet. So, in fact, I remember after we had done my 12th, as I was about to go to Delhi, a friend of mine told me, as soon as you get to Delhi, open an email account. I thought an email account was some kind of hi-fi bank account. that's how things were at that time. So, but after getting there, after getting to IIT and all, padhai ka pressure was a lot, and I'm not a natural genius like some of the other people in my department are. Once you get there, you realize that there is just another level of genius. So there are people who are, let's say, who can be funny, and then there are people who are just naturally funny. They can just tell you stories about their lives, and everyone's laughing all the time. They're the life and soul of a party. I'm not like that. I need a script. I need to be able to rehearse, and then probably I can deliver something. But there are people who are naturally funny, and there are people who are natural geniuses. So there were so many of them in my department over there that I was left quite far behind. And after about, my first year itself was terrible, the first semester. In my 12th, I got physics, chemistry, maths. I got 89, 87, 89, and 76. Math was tough that year. The previous year, I got 91. So these were pretty good marks. Then when I got to IIT in the first semester, physics, I got B. Chemistry, I got C plus, and maths, I got an F. So I failed 2 out of the 3. Whereas in my 12th, I got letters in 2 out of the 3. So it was much more hard work than I was willing to do in IIT. And so after about the first year, first semester, I failed 2 subjects. And then the second semester, I got chicken pox and I failed another 5. And I stayed on only because I went and met the professor of one of the courses and said, okay, if you don't pass me in this course, then I will be kicked out of the institute for not having the required number of passed courses. So I hung on for another year, another 2 years. And then at the end of the 3rd year, I failed one course for a second time. And that was the time I thought, okay, that's it. I'm not going to do this torture anymore, because ultimately my aim was to work in films. I didn't want to be an engineer anyway. So that being the ultimate aim, I thought, okay, enough of this torture. Even if I study really hard for the next 4 5 years, I still won't clear my backlog. So chalo, let's get out of here. So I left. I left IIT and came back to Guwahati. Worked at NETV. It was just starting out back then. Worked at NETV for what, 3 years. I think I was just a news reader, not a reporter. I just read the news. Then after that, I shifted to Bombay.
So that shift to Bombay, like
Hmm.
when you shifted from, I mean, when you talk about this, this idea about how there was no career counseling, I identify with it a lot because we had to go to this because we were a little younger than you. We had to go to CD cafes where we would just be googling about courses and So I remember going to that entire. So when you came to Guwahati, what happened to me. I remember I had also gone back to Guwahati after I did my masters in mass comm, and then there was this always way out. There was always this question: when are you going back? Nobody said, "Are
Hmm.
you settling here?" Because the
Hmm.
situation is such, as a reporter or whatever. So when you went there for 3 years, did you have to face these questions? Did people tell you that when are you going back, or and then how did that progress into you actually going back to to going out of your comfort zone and again going to Bombay?
Well, while I was in Guwahati, I acted in two serials, Doordarshan commissioned programs in Assamese people speaking Hindi, which was a hoot most of the time.
Mm,
And so
love it.
after about 3 years, one day my third mama, the one who says, Hagala gisine ki hoy. So I was talking with him one day and I told him I'm comfortable here. And he said, if I was your age, I wouldn't be comfortable. I would be fighting for my dreams. So that rang a bell with me. And then I thought, actually, yeah, he's right. So there are limits to what can be done over here. If I want to make it big properly, you have to go to Bombay and start working there. So I made the move, and my luck was good that my brother was already there. He does everything in life before me, so he had gone to Bombay before me, and so I was lucky that I had a place to stay when I went there, and I didn't have to sleep on railway platforms or anything.
Right. So when you moved to Bombay, can you
Mm-hmm.
take us a little bit through your experience in Bombay? Now, especially, I want to focus a little bit on this, especially with the outsider-insider argument that
Mm-hmm.
has been raked up in the aftermath of the passing of Sushant Singh Rajput. But of
Hmm.
course, it's not easy for anybody who comes from outside. But how does that outsider question play when you are especially from the Northeast? Because again, that brings another set of questions.
There are a million aspects to it. So one of the first instances I can tell you is this was about 9 10 years ago. So somebody called me up. They wanted some girl from the Northeast for some kind of show or something. So I sent over my cousin who was studying in TIFS at the time. So she met them and did the audition and all. And then, but later on, she wasn't selected. And I got to know that the reason they didn't take her was that she was too confident. So they wanted some bholi, bechari, abla nari, northeastern bechari, discriminated girl to be part of the show, whatever. And so that's one thing. A lot of the time, most of the time, our representation of Asian people is always in this bechara victim mode.
Mm.
Victims of racism, victims of discrimination, blah 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 blah. And then if there are any roles like most of the roles that people will be called for are stuff like um, beauticians, hairdressers, that kind of thing.
Or
Uh,
Chinese or Japanese sometimes.
oh yeah, that's also there. Yeah, I've done that also. um, so, uh, however, there are a few people, a few clever people who who know to look beyond all this, who are more aware of things. Dibakar Banerjee would be the first example that comes to mind because I went for an audition and casting director Atul Mongia, he let me audition for the role of a DSP.
And he's
And
in Shanghai.
yeah, so I auditioned twice for it, I think. And then they liked it. Dibakar also liked it and they gave me that role. And so they changed the name and made it an Assamese name. It was it was a character that could have been from anywhere. So they made it an Assamese name. The same thing happened with Navdeep Singh also. There was supposed to be a film called Basra, Navdeep Singh is the director of Manorama, 6 Feet Under, and NH10 and Lal
NH10.
Kaptan. Yeah. So for his film Bust also, I auditioned. There was a character called Chopra, and I auditioned for that. And he said, "Okay, okay, fine, you can do this role, and we'll change the name to Borwa or something or whatever." so, so there are a few people who are aware that you don't stereotype everybody all the time. But most of the time, I guess it's again that bechara victims of racism wala story that keeps on happening all the time. There are, I mean, if you look around in real life, people from the Northeast have been there in many important positions. You have your Chief Election Commissioner, B.N. Lingdo, then Robin Hibu. So there are so
Lok
many
Sabha
people like
Speaker.
this, but yeah, yeah, yeah. So the majority of people over there, however, they don't think out of the box like this. They don't. It's uh, they are not, maybe not willfully. It's just not in their zehen, so to speak, to think of casting some an unusual person in an unusual position. That's how it is in that regard.
So, I mean, I'm going to come to the outsider argument. Sorry,
Hmm.
the northeastern is a discriminate argument a little later
Hmm.
because I have something in mind. But
Okay.
for right now, can you tell us what led you to make local kung fu while you were there? I think you were in Mumbai for a few years and then local kung fu came up, right?
Huh. So after about 2 years there, I realized that I would have to, in order to become a director, I would have to either assist somebody for a long time, or I would have had need a crorepati father or mother. So I was pretty sure that we didn't have any secret walls with cash hidden in them
Of
or
course.
gold buried in the backyard. So the second one was not an option, and the first one was not much of an option either because I don't have the kind of temperament that can listen to scoldings and galis. I
Mm.
would probably leave immediately. So since that wasn't an option, I thought, and at that time, the DSLR revolution had just started, and that was also the time we saw several of these small, low budget films that went on to make a name for themselves and their makers. We had in our circle the untitled Karthik Krishnan project. So that was sold as a 40,000 rupee budget wali film. So they just had a handy cam and they had the actors do their bits and all, and made on a total cost of 40,000. So that was an inspiring point. And then from outside also there were films like Once, In Search of a Midnight Kiss, all low budget films, but which went on to become big names. Yeah. So at that time, I thought, okay, this could be one way of doing it. So I started writing a script which would be a zero budget film and which became Chocolate Guitar Momos. So I wrote the script for that. Then so while I was taking it, around, I went to a production house and I saw a huge pile of scripts. It was literally about 2 feet tall and 4 feet wide, a huge pile of scripts that they had been sent. And then I just took a look and I saw one of the names was Ashutosh Gowarikar. So I thought the Ashutosh Gowarikar script is lying here. Who am I? so
Mm.
so I realized that the script would probably have more respectability as a novel. So I wrote 3 sample chapters and sent it out. Then my friend Siddharth Sharma, a writer of The Grasshoppers Run, Year of the Weeds, winner of the Crossword Book Prize, he guided me to a couple of publishers, and Westland accepted the book and published it. So once the book came out, I thought, okay, maybe this can be made at a bigger scale rather than a low budget thing. Then I thought, okay, since we can afford a camera, 45,000 rupee camera, the Canon 550D, and mother was willing to spare 1 lakh rupees for making a film. I thought, okay, let us make a martial arts comedy. By that time, we had started doing chote mote fighting videos. So we thought, okay, we have a basic idea how to choreograph fights, how to shoot fights. So if we stitch together 5, 6 fights and a decent story around it, and we have these locations and we have these friends and family members who are decent actors, then we could probably make a film. So that is how we started and went about it.
So local kung fu has this amalgamation of two things: A, comedy, B, action. And when you
Mhm.
say action, it brings to screen kung fu, something that the world has obsessed about for quite a while. And in the Northeast, there is a sublime this subculture that sort of thrives a lot on Bruce Lee movies. And I remember cousins when we were growing up, and they were all obsessed with
Yeah.
martial arts and kung fu. So when I saw the kung fu on screen in your movies, I was amazed. The second movie has a sequence of about 8 to 10 minutes. The last few
Mhm.
when the two duplicate
Yeah.
pairs sort of get messed up and then they fight. That sequence is, I mean, it blew my mind because uh, I don't see that sort of violence. I mean, not violence, but that sort of choreography on screen, even in Bollywood movies. I don't think
Mhm.
so. Bollywood has really attempted a very good kung fu movie. But just
Um, Vidyut Jamwal and Tiger Shroff are the people who can do that level of action. So they are there. Apart from that, not many others.
not many. But the kind of choreography that you brought to the screen in both the movies is superlative. There's only one word for it.
Thank you.
And this is unnecessary superlativeness, in the sense that
Mhm.
you're not using a CGI graphic. It is very much,
No.
it's plain speak. You can look at it, there's no effects at it. I mean,
Yeah.
Inspector Boros definitely has a bit of punches in there, which have been stylized a little bit, but you can't say that they have been edited or touched in any way. So, can you talk a little bit about obviously how LKF explored this entire kung fu obsession of the Northeast? Because Bruce Lee was a big deal. Enter the Dragon was a cult, and you must have grown up looking at it. There is a whole subculture that you brought. So how would you talk about
So
it?
we grew up on Jackie Chan films, and um, when I was studying Cotton College, whenever there was a martial arts film, me and my Dawar Mama, we would go and watch it. So we watched even Khiladiyon Ka Khiladi in Bijuli Hall or somewhere. I don't remember now, but we used to watch whatever action films would come. And uh, since my Mama himself is a kung fu instructor, I also used to practice kung fu with him and his students. So that way we developed some friendships. And so ultimately, when I was in Cotton, so after coming back and after going to Bombay and then getting a camera and making a decision to make a film, we anyway used to make a few small fight videos every now and then. So once we decided that we are going to do the whole film, so we found out the best ones, the best fighters, those who could act also a little decently. So, and we put them all together. We thought about who would be good for what role, who could be the main villain. We then moved the chess pieces around to see what would fit best. And that's how we formed the film. So, since we already had this base of people who knew martial arts, it sort of became a natural fit. And coincidentally, some of my friends and family, they're also very good at comedy, like Bonzo and KK, Bonnie and Ronnie, since they're I lucked out there. I was very lucky that it's like in
Right,
your
right.
own house you have somebody who is so funny. And my own brother also, Tony, who played Montuda. So I consider myself supremely lucky that I got everything at home. I got comedians at home. I got fighters at home. Then I got producer at home, chota mota, even if. But since I had all these, I guess lightning struck in the right place.
Right. No, there are two things I note very clearly about about the movie. A, the fact that in the last movie, in the second movie, in
Hmm.
LKF2, in the sequence where they're fighting,
Hmm.
there's a point where the mama's fighting with this other guy, and he said,
Hmm.
you do this. And that
Yeah.
to me was like the love of kung fu flowing through, you're beating your opponent, but you're saying, wait, why did you do it this way? I found that extremely entertaining. And the other fact that I noted while I was in Delhi and watching it in the hall, and there were a couple of us, these Guwahati people around there. I think you bought the Guwahati slang on screen, which
Mhm.
obviously Guwahati filmmakers don't want to do because, oh, that's too, what do you say? That's too layman for
Beneath
us.
us.
They think, oh, we have to do this big, we have to follow Bollywood and all. But you brought this entire conversation home in the sense that yours is an indie, which is indie by Guwahati standards also. So, I mean, how do you place yourself in that Guwahati film industry? Like, where do you, like, with all your movies, now you're like, I mean, if you say you're announcing a movie, you should see the sort of flutter on Facebook in the Assamese community or anywhere else. I mean, I see it mostly online, and it's insane. Like, so how do you place yourself in terms of the Assamese film industry? You've also, taken up very important issues on behalf.
That's I don't really consciously think of my place in the industry here. Before that, let me mention that idea of when Mama is fighting, he stops fighting and says "Yat," and again "Yat block kar." So that was his own idea, Mama's own idea.
Yeah.
So I'm always open to ideas from my cast and crew, and if I like it, then I say okay, do it. So that's how we work. And now about the industry here, I haven't consciously thought about it. I just I've made the films that I've made, and I try to give them a good try to give them a good release. Try to let people know about it as much as possible. So there's no specific way that I see myself here, and but one good thing I would say is that I'm also going to be a part of other people's films here. Like I'm acting in
Mm.
Bhaskar Hazarika's next film, Emuthi
Wow.
Puthi. That's going to be a woman-powered film. It's directed by a woman, shot by a woman, dialogue written by a woman, and the main cast is mother, daughter, grandmother. So that's going to be a wonderful film. And if it went for COVID, I guess it might have been released early next year or maybe at the end of this year. Emuthi Puthi, that's one film to watch out for. And then there's also Sorgoroth, directed by Rajesh Punya. Rajesh has been one of the most experienced directors in Assam. And the script by Santanu Romoria is a brilliant script. So when I heard him narrate it, I I marveled at it. At least we have somebody who is a brilliant writer in Assam as well. So that's another film that I'll be very happy to be proud of. We've shot about half of it. I think I have a few days of work left, but then Corona came in just as we were starting the second half of the.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and we're also going to choreograph the action for Barud 2. So that's going to be will be part of another big budget Assamese film that way. So that's how things stand now.
You also, if I remember correctly, if I read this somewhere, you've also choreographed, action sequence for one of Anurag Kashyap's short movies, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie, but he did. You did something on that.
Yeah, we did the action choreography and training. The film is called That Day After Every Day. I think it's on YouTube. So it was produced by, I forgot, it was for large short films. That was the banner. So we trained the four actresses in it: Sandhya Mridul, Gitanjali Thapa, um, Radhika Apte, and Aranya Kaur. So 4 mornings we gave them some training in a bit of fighting, and Anurag was clear about what kind of action he wanted. He said he didn't want the filmy kind of ye mara, ye block, yeah, and it shouldn't look pretty. It should look ugly, like wrestling and struggling and all. And that was what we gave him, and he was pretty happy with the end result also. So we had the women practice in such detail that we had put together 47 shots to take for that fight scene. But and it was supposed to be like this, that Anurag would direct up to the point where the fight would start, and then it would be over to us. But when that shot happened, he didn't say cut. he let it continue rolling, and so everybody went on and they did the fight moves that they had been taught. Whatever they were supposed to do, it went on and on until they reached the end. And Anurag was very happy about it. Very good, very good. Okay, you carry on now. So, and after that, we directed the individual shots. And I think it could have been edited better because there's a bit of lack of clarity now in the finished
Mm-mm.
product. But yeah, that was a good experience.
Now, moving back to that, conversation about this Assamese film industry,
Hmm.
I I remember you sort of picking up the cudgels on behalf of the Assamese film industry when you went out and said that that Assamese movies are not given wide berth in movie halls in Assam.
Mhm.
This is after the kind of problems that the Assamese film industry had to face because of the insurgency
Hmm.
in the past decades. We somehow recovered. We have our own industry up and running, but we don't get the first preference in terms of movie halls. So you always have like a big Bollywood movie pushing movies out, like yours had happened, and it's difficult to become independent. I also understand that there are a lot of streaming platforms that are helping now, but that again is not what a movie platform can do in a tier 2 city. So I mean, has there been any sort of progress in this? Have you had like any deliberations with the government? Have they assured you anything? Because as far as I remember, the Assam government made some noise about saying that we'll come out with a policy that will make sure that our movies are on for a longer time. But has anything happened since then? Has the bigger names in the Sesame industry said anything after you picked it up?
Uh, After all that happened, um, what I've realized now is that if the theater owners, they only care about how many tickets have been sold. So whether those ticket sales happen because of an Assamese film or a Hindi film or a Hollywood film, they don't really care. They just want bums in seats. So if that happens because of an Assamese film, they'll happily give the Assamese film more shows. We have seen this now with Village Rock Stars. We've seen it with Mission China, Kanchenjunga, and Ratnakot. So
Hmm.
Village Rockstar started out with a few shows. They just planned to have a certain number of shows, but then the Oscar selection thing happened, so it blew
Embarrassing.
up.
Hmm.
Yeah, and everyone went to watch it, and shows became houseful, and cinema halls on their own increased the number of shows. So nobody had to struggle for anything for that. It's just that the more the people went, the more the halls gave them shows. So and so even Mission China and Kanchenjunga and um, Ratnakor, so they've also succeeded against other films. Um, Mission China did, I think, during the time of Ratnakor, Houseful 4 was probably around in theaters, but Houseful 4 shows were replaced by Ratnakor shows. So that's it. It's public power. Whatever the public wants to watch, the halls will give them more shows for that. Now, how you get the public to watch your film, that is other. That's the other game to play. That's the other thing to look into.
But you're there in the sense that why that's what I was telling you before we started, that how amongst a section, not just a section, I mean amongst
Hmm.
the major chunk of moviegoers in Assam, you are quite a
Hmm.
popular figure. Like I keep a watch over the subculture in Assam by following these different things. Sometimes it's the music of the region, sometimes it's those
Hmm.
Instagram pages, and I see in the Instagram pages some of the big ones. I mean, I don't want to name them because I mean, I could be offending somebody or something. But some of these Instagram pages, which have a lot of names on the Assamese culture per se, about what your father said, what
Hmm.
this happened, this is a due thing, whatever. So a lot of these, you are seen as like the dada of comedy. So you have like this very honorable position. So the idea that Kenny has done it, and he's given us comedy as well as kung fu. I think for a certain generation, a little generation who was a little older than us, I think it was the kung fu that clicked. And for the generation which is my generation, a little younger than us, I think it's the comedy that clicked. So you have a wide acceptance. So in that sense, I think Have you checked out these Instagram pages? You know what I'm like talking about, like how sort of they treat you as sort of this, you know, they have a lot of reverence for you in these pages that I've seen.
It's nice. I quite appreciate that we've become part of the pop culture in so many ways. There's pages like Local Kung Fu Fan Club, Local Kung Fu Memes. So I'm pretty appreciative and grateful that we've been accepted so nicely. And but most importantly, I try not to let it go to my head because
Hmm.
uh, at the end of the day, you're only as good as your last film in many ways. So I always try to keep a level head and never try to make something on the basis of my past laurels, based on my past efforts. I always think about this next thing. How can I make this the best that it's going to be? I don't think about people giving us grace marks. I just want to make whatever I make to be the best possible, which is why I try not to think too much about um, the popularity aspect of it. It's nice and all, and it's nice as long as it helps drive people to the theaters because that is the bottom line. That's
Mm-hmm.
another thing I've realized is that we whatever we see on social media is actually a very small echo chamber. We don't when we say release a trailer, we share it and then we see 200-300 people have shared it. We think, okay, yeah, it's very nice. So that gives us a false sense of security that people know about it. But I've come to realize it's not really true.
Right, the case
It's
always.
a really small number. So until and unless, in my opinion, until and unless your local shopkeeper has not heard about your film, unless he knows about the film, you have not done a good job of publicity. So
Mm.
um, recently, when I went to get a printout from somewhere, the boy there recognized me and asked me local utpat or ki khabar. Then I know, okay, theek ase. This
Awesome.
we have got some amount of word out.
Mm.
So, so that's my benchmark now. Until and unless my local shopkeepers have not heard of the film, the publicity has not been good enough.
No, because I think Instagram is now the big thing in Assam. Everybody's on Instagram, and I think all the local Utpat visuals and like you keep on doing these tiny shots, like you did one last night. So I think that has a lot of reception. So I
Yeah,
mean, all the people in your movie, all the young boys and all the young people, who were part of both the LKF movies and Inspector Boro. I think they're
mm,
known names now in Assam, isn't it? Like a lot of people recognize them on the streets. So doesn't that happen? To
yeah, it happens a lot, and especially after the heavy budget channel has become so popular. Now,
Mm-hmm.
so they are more
They're
popular
very
than me. They get recognized more easily than me.
So, while you're talking about, this whole, movie, this how reception happens in the Assamese movie industry, uh, it is very important to note that in the last two movies that you've done, in the
Mm,
last two movies that you've done, people have contributed money to sort of see the
mm,
movies on screen, which I think is a huge deal, especially given for an audience in Assam. Because I don't remember the movie going audience in Assam or any sort of audience in Assam, uh, usually parting with their money. I know how music fans sort of give out their money. How difficult is it to have them come and see a show? And that is after the show's already been designed and you just have to come and see it. It's difficult unless you have a strong resonance with the artist, nobody comes. So in terms
mm.
of movies also, I think for you to have raised money two times, one after the other, where people are paying money to see a product a few months down the lane, I think that's incredible. So how has that experience been? What were your expectations when you sort of decided to, have part of the movie financed from people? Because I know the equation, the financial equation doesn't work out. We also know the fact that you had to sell off a property in Mumbai to sort of finance your movies, and it's very difficult to make money. So can you take us through how this entire financing game works out, and how difficult is it for anybody? Even in Assam, you're sort of an outsider. If you look at it in terms of that, in that industry, sort of how financing works.
There's um, been thinking of making a video about it for some time on how the basics of financing a movie works. So
You should, you
you
should.
need to look at all the day-to-day expenses. You need to look at, there'll be at least, at the very least, 20 to 25 people on set. There'll be a few light boys, there'll be a spot boy, then there might be an art department, there might be a costume department also. We have managed without several departments. We haven't used makeup in local kuku too, for example. We needed some specific injuries or blood or something. So, we work with a small crew, but even in a small crew, you might have 20 to 25 people per day. 20 to 25 people per day. Food has to be khilawed, breakfast, snacks, and everything. Food works up to 250 rupees per head per day. So if you have 20 people, that's what, 5,000 per day on food. Then you have to hire vehicles, 3 vehicles, maybe a sumo and a couple of other cars, 2,000 per car or 1,100 per car, depending on the car. So all that stuff, and you work out to some kind of minimum, could be anything from 20 to 20,000 per day. It could be up to 1 lakh a day, depending on the scale of your project. So at the very, very least, a film to shoot and everything, it can come up to anywhere from 10 to 40 lakhs to 50 lakhs and more than that, depending on how many people you have to feed, how many people you have to transport. Then you have your post-production, editing, color, music, and so all these things are there. So, and the bottom line is, all this money can be recovered only when people buy tickets. If you spend 20 lakhs at the very least in making a film, then you need to spend another publicity again. There's no limit. You can spend 10 lakhs on publicity, 15, 25 lakhs on publicity, and that might just be enough. So let's say you have spent 30 lakhs on your film, your box office sale has to be at least 60 to 65 lakhs, because out of that, about 40, 45% comes back to the producer. So you need to sell about 60, 65 lakhs worth of tickets, which means how many people need to watch your movie. If the ticket is 100 rupees each, approximately about 60,000, that is, if I'm getting it correct. So anyway,
That's so
60,000 or 6,000 anyway. So that's the main point, that you have to have X number of people buying tickets to watch your films. Then only the films will be financially, they'll financially recover their cost. So that is the bottom line. Now, how you get those 60,000 people to buy tickets for your film, that is now up to
your thing. No, because if LKF went on for more than a month, perhaps you would have broken even. Don't you think that?
Yeah, yeah, it would have taken about a month. That's the other thing. We have very few theaters in Assam. So we have just about 50, 60 theaters in which you can expect some income. Like Kerala, for example, has over 500, 600 halls. So
It's easy to break even.
Yeah, if a hall here gives you, let's say, 40,000 in a week of an average, then you have 50 halls giving you, say, what, 40,000, 30,000. But if you have 500 halls giving you 30,000, 40,000 each, then you recover much more easily. Yeah. So these are the things that we have to struggle with over here, the numbers. Which is why if the number of halls increases, then that's a very good thing. And so far, these last couple of years, 2-3 years, there have been several halls, new halls being built and also old halls being renovated. So every film that we've released, there have been new halls coming up. So even now, since Inspector Boro and for Local Upa, there will be some new halls in between. So fingers crossed that things get better and better.
So, I wanted to ask you one more thing, like in let's say in that whole kung fu genre of things, do you think that apart from Assam, you had some sort of an acceptability? Do you think in the Southeast Asia region, I mean, if not in India, did you have any sort of reception? Because your movies on some of the platforms, so I just perhaps that could be an indicator of where the traffic is coming from. I'm sure all of it is, I mean, most of it is from Assam or most of it is from India. But do you also see an interest from across the country, across the globe, anywhere else?
There's maybe one or two people here and there, but nothing significant as far as I know. From movie scenes, we've got to know that there have been people watching from countries as far away as Serbia and Montenegro, but that might be Assamese people out there. We don't know yet, but there's one or two views from
Yeah,
everywhere,
that's true.
all corners of the world.
But perhaps that is also like a, an interest in kung fu per se.
I can't say for sure.
So when you were making local kung fu, and I mean, even with Inspector Boro, the idea that one gets, is that you have this very unassuming way of sort of taking on things, like for example, you spoke about there's a character in LKF who very unassumingly says, I mean, I'm gay, I can't be interested in a woman. And then you say, why can't you be interested in a woman? Oh, because I'm gay. So it's a very it's not a coming out sort of a thing, but it's just laying it out there. Okay, fine, I'm gay. So I mean, is this is just one example of how things happen, and also the way you sort of plan a movie where it's very unassuming. Like a lot of these things, you're talking about comedy, yes, but then again, you're also weaving a sort of a lot of other messaging. Like for example, that guy who keeps on eating good. There's a guy who has gudka, but he's had so much of gudka that now all the food that he
Hmm.
eats in the mixer and then put on his plate.
Yeah.
That one, the idea of the messaging across the movie, and the idea that how you take how the entire movie is so unassuming. Like all these movies where the way the whole thing progresses, it's very unassuming in the sense that you get the feel that you're doing as you go, sort of. Does that really happen like that, or it's just how it looks like it, and there's a lot of planning, and like, in the sense it's very effortless.
Yeah, that's how we try to make it look. Everything should actually look effortless on screen. And also, whenever we want to say anything, if we want to put out any kind of message, it's always better to do it in a funny way. Because if you want to say something serious in a serious way, people will probably tune out. Nobody watches a movie to get bhashan. So you have to put it across in a funny way. When people laugh, then they're more open to accepting whatever you're saying. So that's one thing about it. And the other thing is, okay, we always, that's the key, that it should look effortless. Even a complicated story should be
So
easy to understand. Yeah. We put a lot of effort into plotting of all three films. So even Inspector Boro, when you watch it, you'll realize that it's a pretty complicated plot if you try to reverse engineer it. But when you watch it, it should unfold very easily and it should seem simple. Only when you look back at it, in fact, the same thing would apply for local kung fu also, because there's several threads going on. There's my character, there's the under 18 Don, there's the Duluda who wants the liquor license. So the way these things are woven together, they need to intersect at the correct time and they need to pay off at the correct time. So these things all need to be plotted properly and need to look effortless. There was a question.
because because LKF2 is extremely complicated. Like if you look at it,
Yeah,
it's
well,
complicated, but it,
Shakespeare made it easy, and then Gulzar Saab made it even easier.
yeah. So yeah, I mean,
um, there's a couple of questions. Should we look at those?
yeah, sure. I can't accept them.
One was about marketing. How important is marketing?
Okay,
Marketing is
okay,
marketing is very important. Marketing
fine.
is everything. And Navneet Bora had asked about using social media to promote Assamese films, and I can answer those together. That social media is a bit of an echo chamber. It's an illusion, as I mentioned before. Social media will only tell you about your own circle. So until and unless your trailer isn't shared by, let's say, 1 lakh people, if it's shared by 1 lakh people, then okay. then you can think a good. But if it's shared by 200, 300 people, then we can't stay under the illusion that okay, lots of people have seen it. No, that's not correct. And Zubinda did pretty genius things with his marketing for Mission China and Kanchenjunga. Wherever he would go for shows, I've been to one where I was also invited. It was at the Ayurvedic College hostel. So he had come, he sang a few songs, and he played an AV of some dialogue from Kanchenjunga. So imagine if Zubinda, wherever he goes to sing, he sings and then he plays a snippet from his film. So all the venues that he has gone to over the past 2, 3 years during making these films, all the places he has gone, he tells everyone about Mission China, he tells everyone about Kanchenjunga. So finally, when the release date comes, pretty much everybody knows about it. So that is the level of marketing that will lead to ultimately the number of tickets being bought that needs to be done. Same thing with Ratnakar also. Ratnakar, there are in Guwahati during the release of Ratnakar, the whole of Zoo Road from one end to another, there were banners on the light posts. So you couldn't avoid the publicity. So that is the level of marketing and publicity that you do need. And also on TV, people need to be aware through TV trailers also. So I realized that just relying on social media is not good enough. You need to be everywhere.
Okay. Uh, we have more questions, or we don't have
Those
any?
were the two.
Those are the only questions. You wait for more. So yeah, I mean, you've been an actor and you've been a filmmaker. Which is that one role you think you sort of identify with more, which is where you have to work less and enjoy more? Is there any distinction that you see, or you enjoy both equally?
I enjoy both of them equally, and a lot of it also depends on what exactly is going on. Sometimes when as a director, you have to be aware of everything all the time. You have to be on throughout. Your brain has to be on, figuring out what to do next, how to do next. Time is running out, light is running out, it might rain. So all these things, as a director, you don't have a single moment to rest. You always have to be thinking about what's going to happen next. So those are the times when I sometimes wish maybe it was nice being an actor, just chill and learn your own lines and come and do the dialogue and then go back into the vanity van and rest. And then there are those other days as an actor when your makeup is done and you're sitting in the van wearing your costume and all and just waiting and waiting and waiting, and you wait for 10 hours and you go to sleep and then you read something and then again go to sleep and you're still not called. And that's when you think, maybe it's better to be a director, at least you won't be so bored. So depends on what's happening on the day.
What's happening at what time? So, this one important thing that I sort of, which I sort of realize, uh, a lot of the way you come on screen in terms of a director's, in terms of the movies that you have directed yourself, because you obviously cannot have autonomy of what another director sees on screen. But in your own products, I have seen something where you're very unabashedly northeast, and this is taking a little bit about our outsider conversation earlier in the chat. Your idea of what you present on screen is so effortlessly northeastern, and
Mhm.
I'm talking about northeast especially in the light of the sort of reception that Akhuni had some days back,
Mhm.
where I think a lot of the people also felt that perhaps the idea of a compromise could have been a little avoided, in the sense that Akhuni sort of said, "Okay, fine, perhaps we are, So, I mean, just looking at how, you know, the Northeast is portrayed on screen, you have given us products where you are unapologetically Northeastern, and there is no two ways about it. So, this idea of, this Bechara person doesn't exist. Because, of course, we have to talk about the racial discrimination on screen, but we also cannot, you know we cannot overlook the fact that we exist, and this is
Mhm.
how we are. So that is something that your products have brought to the screen. Do you have something to say about that? about it, because you remain very apolitical as a person, but you're in terms of that, very unassumingly political in terms, like you're laying out something very effortlessly. So would you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, racism does exist. There definitely we've all faced it at some point or the other, but that's not all that there is to us. Uh, there there have been other. there's- Again, we've already mentioned this before that Lok Sabha Speaker, police commissioners, and then um, election commissioners. So we've already had all these people in all these occupations. So if we just try to focus on uh, portraying us as just any other normal people, quote normal people. So
Mm,
rather
not
than
like.
the ones who are always being discriminated against, then I guess that would help tons more. I um, it's a little difficult to. I mean, there's so many aspects to this that I don't exactly know where to start. But that's my primary feeling
Mm,
that at least if we look at mainstream industry, mainstream Hindi film industry or TV industry and all, then it's time that they let us be seen as people and not the people who are discriminated against.
mm. Like, while we're talking about this whole Instagram taking off in Assam a lot, in that sense. Under the lockdown, you've had comedians like Danish Syed taking off in a big way just by
Mhm.
using like a phone and some random thing in his hand and his own skill, and then he suddenly become this big breakout Instagram star, where everybody wants to have an ad through him. So I mean, Assam sort of lacks it. We have a few of these kids coming up now. But do you think comedy can percolate to that? Do you think that the sort of things that you guys do can also have like an audience in small bursts and forms in terms of in places like Instagram and all, because some of these stars have some of these comedians have become breakout stars just by doing that. Do you think that? Mm,
It's definitely possible someday somebody or the other will come up, somebody or the other will break out. It's just um, some guy who is naturally talented and he needs to get together with the right medium. He needs to study the medium a little bit, study the genre also a little bit, and he'll make it. It's just a matter of time. Somebody or the other will come out.
like you have Bonzo and all, so they're so
Mm.
funny. So a small shot that they keep on. Also, a lot of these streaming platforms, like Movie Saints, you said, like a
Mm.
lot of these streaming platforms have come up, which sort of gives movies an alternate space to sort of function even after the immediate release has time has gone. Has it helped you in any sense? Like, do you think it is something that
Definitely.
upcoming filmmakers can sort of look to?
Definitely, Movie Saints. I'm pretty grateful to them. That's been one platform where a lot of people have managed to watch the film. Uh, for one, it's an official platform, and secondly, since people need to pay to watch it, we managed to get some return out of it as well. But again, there also, it's again a question of spending some money on marketing and publicity. Because no matter where you show your film, you need to spend some money on telling people that you can watch my film over here.
Over
So
period of time?
uh, even if your film is released in theaters, you need to spend a shit ton of money letting people know, okay, the film is coming to theaters on so and so date, so please watch it. And then you also need to let people know that the film is available on moviesaints.com, because even now a lot of people keep asking me where can we watch it, and I tell the Movie Saints, and it sometimes surprises me because in almost all the publicity that I put out on social media or YouTube or whatever, I always mention that the film is available to watch on moviesaints.com. But there are still loads of people asking where they can watch it, which just goes to show that actually you need to spend a lot more effort or time in making people aware that this is the place where you can watch the movie. So Amis has helped a lot for movie saints because movie saints distributed Amis, and so that way their brand awareness has become much better now. So a lot of good Assamese content, northeastern content is on movie saints. So that's one good thing that's come out now.
Can you talk a little bit about local utpat? Because you've seen all the stuff that you've done. You keep on showing us a
Mhm.
little bit of what's happening behind the scenes on all these social media, and obviously that interest of what is going to come is already picked amongst a lot of us. But we still don't know what
Mhm.
local utpat is about, and we have seen the synopsis because I saw it on the Wishperi page. But can you tell us a little bit about it, and when can we see the movie on screen finally? I know COVID has spoiled a lot of things, but still.
Local Utpat, we made as a full out and out comedy by combining the heavy budget and local kung fu gangs, which are pretty much the same thing. So we have Bonzo in the lead role this time as the hero, and
Okay.
we have my brother Tony as breakup guru. So in heavy budget, he's played the love guru. He's converted to breakup guru now. So he's one of the main villains, and then Poonam Gurung, who was heroine in Inspector Boro. She's opposite Bonnie, and we started this as intending to make it a full-on comedy, but now that we've edited it and seen it, it's become more than that. It's actually become a really nice friends and family film, and feel good film is what it's turned out into. It's of course very funny, but it's also now become a feel good film, and it's something that I really want to watch with audiences in theaters, because there's no fun in an online release. You can't watch it with people and hear them laugh, which is what I like most of all. So let's see. Hopefully, if COVID peaks in July, August, and then starts going down again, then we might have a bit more of a sense of when we can release in theaters. I've heard that Kingsman is releasing in theaters in July in the US. So if that goes half decent and we reach their stage a few months later, then I guess things can start getting back to some kind of normal here also.
So there was a bit of a talk about LKF 3, right? Like, and oh, no, no, sorry, the LKF 2 being turned into Hindi. So have you attempted that?
No, we already shot the Hindi version simultaneously, which
Oh,
is
you
what we
did
did
send
with
it.
Inspector Boro also. Yeah. So if there are friends who would want to watch Inspector Boro in Hindi, then that version is also already available on Movie
Okay,
Saints.
a movie
So
scene.
it's we shot all the dialogue twice. So an actor would say the dialogue once in Assamese and once in Hindi. So we did this with both Inspector Boro and LKF2.
Okay.
With LKF2 though, we never
But
got
LKF
around
two is
to
tweeting it out.
come again.
I said LKF 2 in Hindi. I didn't actually come across it. So
No,
that's
no,
exactly that's why I was.
I never got around to editing it. I
Okay.
sort of edited it into 2 episodes, but after that, I think I didn't have the money to dub it in Hindi, so I didn't really bother cutting the rest of it. I might at some point, but for now, focus is on other things.
Is on local utpat.
Kenny, I cannot
Yeah.
stop myself asking this question. I very fondly remember something from Inspector Suspended Inspector Boro.
Mhm.
We keep on talking. We talk about films where male character being hero is saving the woman and doing all this shit, and whereas Inspector Boro is so much fun that hero is he's cooking his own meal, as simple as that, and is
Yeah.
not bothered that his
Yeah,
girlfriend
I
is
would
going out at 10
totally agree.
o'clock. In fact, he's bashing the neighbors who are questioning the girl going out at night. And our heroine is also so confident that, come, people who wants to rape her is she is going to tackle those goons. That was that was something really, really important. I think I have not seen a single Hindi mainstream film taking such a stand. Would you just talk about where and how this things had started?
Well, I think a lot of credit for this would go to my last girlfriend, whom I'm unfortunately not with anymore. But she, being with her, watching movies with her, made me much more aware of a lot of these tiny subtleties in things of how women are portrayed on screen, of how heroes are portrayed on screen, about hyper masculinity, about macho men. So all these things, the little things that I've come to understand and learn from her, and they've made their way into my movies. So, um, and also since the fact that I've grown up in a family where my mother is a very strong figure. She's been working. She's a state government officer, retired a few years ago. So she's always been working, and we've always grown around strong women. So the image of the Sehmi hui Abla Nari, that just doesn't that doesn't work for us. So I guess all these factors have contributed in, um, I guess, putting up strong female characters in our films also.
That's
You know,
fantastic.
there is a lot of interest in LKF3. So can you tell us if the LKF3 will ever take on? Because I have had people ask me to ask you this question. Please ask me
Mhm.
when is LKF3 coming. So that I think is an interest across all ages.
The thing is now, it will depend on the success of local Utpat. If local
Okay.
Utpat is financially successful, the money comes back, then we can make our next film. If the money does not come back, then either we have to crowdfund again, which I don't want to do that every time, or I will need to get somebody else to finance the film. And when you have somebody else financing the film, then there's a whole lot of other headaches along with
Yeah.
it. You can imagine a lot of whatever things you can imagine, the kind of compromises that might be needed. Um, it's a big headache to have to deal with other people. So local kung fu 1, local kung fu 2, we made pretty much on our own money without having to answer to anybody all the time. So those were great experiences. So if we manage to recover the money from local Utpat, then we can plow that into the next film. It might be local kung fu 3. So that possibility is there. Or if somebody else wants to make and somebody had approached me to write a series also. It's happened twice, a local kung fu series. So I'd written 6 episodes also on one occasion, and yet another
That's
version I'd written. Huh? Yeah, just last year also there was some talk. I sent them a story also for LKF3, which they might have made into a web series, but again, both of them sort of fizzled out. So anything can happen. But if local Utpat, if the money comes back, then that will be the answer to everything.
I think we should take this opportunity on behalf of Sehar. We would like to request everybody, each and every viewer, whoever is watching today or would be watching us after this live gets over, please, please watch Local Utpat. We cannot stop Kenny making local kung fu tree. And if you have not watched local kung fu 1 and 2 and suspended the Inspector Boro, please, please, it's on Movie Saint. Please do not miss this opportunity. Do not wait for pirated copies. Do not wait for YouTube. Please, guys, we're not spending on those stupid popcorns and 600 rupees PVRs. We're spending dirty amount. And I think even if you're spending that much money in Delhi and Mumbai for a film which is so fascinating, which deserves this love and affection, we should not be waiting to watch it for free. Please, people, please watch it.
Thank you, Rikimi. The other thing is, there's a misunderstanding, a misconception that YouTube pays a lot, but that's not true. Local Kung Fu is on YouTube. It's been there for about 2 years now or so. I don't know exactly what, but in 2-3 years, it's had 1.4 million views, and 1.4 million views has given us about 12,000 rupees. So you can imagine if we have had 12,000
Oh.
rupees in 2 years, how many years it would take to recover the money of a full film.
But have you thought of sort of re-releasing LKF 1 and 2, even Inspector Boro on platforms like Amazon Video or Netflix? Because Amazon seems to have a very wide variety of regional content. Have you reached out to them? Have you spoken to them? Have they reached out to you or anything? Because there's very
Uh, the response
few
I got,
Assamese content there, by the way. I mean, I have seen only, I think, a couple of these well-known. Sorry, I lost you there.
yeah, the
Yeah, yeah. You said
response,
the response you got was?
the response we got was that Assamese films are currently not a priority area. So this was the response about 2 years ago when we had sent them local kung fu 2.
Mm.
So I mean, now that some of these films have become big hits, Assamese films, Mission China, Kanchenjunga, and all, now that the numbers are there, now they might think, okay, this is a market worth looking at. Because if you look at it from their
Yes.
point of view, if our own people are not watching our own films, why would they bother? So until and unless
Then
they
why would
see that,
anybody? Yes.
yeah. So if they see that, okay, Notnak or Mission China Kanchenjunga, these films are all big hits, and then Amaze, Bonodi Bhotia, they are getting a lot of attention also and a lot of acclaim, then okay, yeah, they would probably think about it a bit. But then again, it's again all about stars and numbers and those things even over there.
Hmm. So this is
Uh,
again an appeal to people who are watching, because you should obviously watch his movies. You should definitely watch Assamese movies, because unless you watch these movies, the evolution of the kind of movies that you see on screen is not going to happen. You want a good movie, pay for it, watch it, because like he says on movie sense, and it's also, I think, an appeal to people like people in Amazon or Netflix to sort of put more regional content. When you say regional, they are always relegated to Telugu movies or
Hmm,
Malayalam movies or
hmm,
know, Tamil movies or Kannada movies or sometimes Punjabi and sometimes Oriya. So you don't have a lot of northeastern content. You have Bangla obviously, but beyond that, I don't think so there's much on these. You don't have them as categories. I mean, we exist, so put our content on your platform.
Well, there's a new platform coming up called Real Drama. So Real Drama is going to focus on the Eastern India market, Bengal, Orissa, and the Northeast. So they have acquired my films.
Oh,
So they're supposed to launch later in the year. So when that happens, all these films will be available there.
there also. Okay, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
So we can't say when exactly it'll happen because of COVID, but till then you can watch the movies on Movie Sync.
I think one of the questions you've already addressed, I suddenly remember that how local kung fu and suspended inspector and now even local utpat
Hmm.
has become not only a film or a culture, it has become a lifestyle for many of us. The memes, like I remember for everything, people have something to say from one of these films. I think I met a couple of non-Assamese native people who also keeps on using those catchphrases to converse, and even if they're meeting me for the first time and they would
Hmm.
like address with one of the catchphrases, which is fantastic. I think I am totally proud of Kenny. Seriously, we're looking forward for more wonderful works from you. And definitely
Thank
our
you.
support, the entire Sehar team is with you. Whatever you do, we are there.
Thank you very much, Ricky. So glad to have the support of such nice people.
Amrita, do you have something else or should we wind up gradually? I think she's having her issues with her the connectivity.
Acha.
Uh, Kenny, uh, do we also have to? I know it's totally depending on the situation. And is something else brewing? Is should we know something about it?
The thing is, we we would have started shooting a web series also for this platform, Real Drama, romantic comedy. In fact, we had finished our casting also, and we would have started in July, but now obviously we can't. So we'll have to wait till things settle down a bit. Otherwise, that would have been our first proper web series.
Okay. So we are waiting for the situation to. And where do you generally shoot? Generally in Assam, or you also
Pretty
you're
much
open
everything
for?
in Guwahati.
Okay. The casting also happens in Guwahati.
Um, most of my films are friends and family films,
Friends and
mostly.
family.
So wherever they are.
Yeah, your mama is a legend. I remember I also learned Kung Fu in my childhood.
Oh.
Like Amrita was saying, definitely I was a person who she could ever think of. I actually had participated two of the competitions, and both the
Oh.
competition, the major competitors were from your mama's groups.
Oh, okay.
I was child, but I still remember that definitely. Like when I saw him for the first time in Lookum, I said, I know him.
Very interesting connections.
Definitely. Amrita is off, I guess. But we would gradually wind us up this session. Fantastic. We are really happy to have with us, Kenny.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
giving so much of time. I know that this time is definitely not happy for all of us. But I think we at Sehar somehow found our joy that we had connected to the people we were always were looking forward for, and it has also given us the liberty that even if there's a physical distance, we can continue this conversation. And in our page, we have also requested all the viewers if they have any questions, they can keep on asking you or any other people. So that
Okay.
also is a kind of a practice we had started following, and it is, to be honest, not during the lockdown or only because of the COVID situation. We'll continue. We promise to continue forever, as long as we do not get exhausted or and we say like we do not have any more people whom we want to talk to. And we'll again have Kenny with us, I'm sure, with his new web series. Whenever it launches, we'll again have you with us and we'll have more of this conversation. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Kenny.
Thank you very much, Rigmi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.